Hi, welcome to Cubs and Culture for 127 2019. Excuse me. We are up to The Last Emperor, which is the story of Pu Ying, who is the last emperor of Japan. This is the closest thing we have to at this time, a foreign language film winning Best Picture. Because it's really not, it's an Italian film. Even though the film's in English, it's an Italian film about Chinese history with basically no Americans involved at all. And so there's been Anglo-American films like Man for All Seasons, for example, to win Best Picture. But this is really the first international film. Anyway, I really like this film. It's really impressive in the scope of the film that you don't actually lose sight of the intimate story, which is about this poor guy. Anyway, let me bring up some trailer and clips. I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so this movie actually has one of the largest scopes in terms of time. It's basically a 59 year story, because it starts in 1908, which is when he ascends to the throne, and then it ends in 1967 when he dies. And one of the things that's striking about the movie and how it's structured is it's built around flashbacks, actually. So you actually meet him, Pu Ying is how you say his name, in political rehabilitation, i.e. prison, during the communist years after World War II, because he collaborated with the Japanese / he was the symbol of the old empire. And it ends up flashing back and forth between it, because it's sort of making the point that this guy was always in prison his entire life. So this scene right here is his coronation, and he ascended the throne when he was 3 years old. And the movie is absolutely gorgeous to look at. It was actually filmed in the Forbidden City. It's one of the few, if only, films ever allowed to film there. The movie is not quite as harsh on the Chinese as you would like Chairman Mao and the political rehabilitation, because of them getting access. There's still a scene at the end where that sort of point is made that it was not necessarily the best thing. Any case, and so this is his coronation, and he's only 3 here. And so it's one of the things that's very striking about this film in terms of how it's a sort of like a epic character study, is this guy, because he's trapped here because he's the emperor, and so he's only allowed in the Forbidden City, basically, but he doesn't quite understand it. So there's this weird sort of loneliness that sort of permeates the entire film, because he basically, in the history, he only became emperor to support the imperial system in the Forbidden City, because it was such a lavish thing that basically they kept it going because so many people depended upon it for work. But eventually, like, he abdicates and he becomes the emperor of only the Forbidden City. So it ends up feeling very, very like a waste and just empty pomp and circumstances, and the movie absolutely captures that. And you get that because the largest sort of ceremonial scenes are when he's a child, i.e. what you're watching right here. Now, he doesn't really understand what's going on. The other sort of thing that's nice about the movie in terms of sort of the cinematography is it's a little bit not as striking or as obvious as in like Traffic, but the sections are actually sort of color coded, which helps with mood. Excuse me, but it also helps with just keeping things straight. So the Forbidden City sections, excuse me, like this one, are sort of shift into the golds and the reds in terms of like its art direction and costumes and everything like that. And sort of the cinematography, but it's also sort of shifted other sequence. So like when he's in political rehabilitation, that's shifted into the blues and grays, and it really keeps the sections very, very clear, and distinct. Or then like in when he trying to collaborate with the Japanese, that shot, kind of naturalistic colors, everything like that. And the thing about this film, in terms of its story and sort of its screenplay, is it manages to handle such a large story, but it's very, very intimate in a way, because the movie's told almost exclusively from Po Ying's point of view, and so you don't really see political upheavals at all. You only see how the political upheavals affect him. So this is him as an adult in prison, communist political rehabilitation, and I think this flashback structure really, really works for this story, because his life was never really his own. And one of the things one of the things about royal dramas like this is, how are you supposed to relate to or sympathize with people who live such materially privileged lives? But the movie absolutely captures how he's not, he's at no point in his life, except for maybe the last few years when he was after his being released from the political rehabilitation, he's never been the master of his own destiny. So in this sequence right here, the Chinese Republic that kept him around, basically as a symbolic head, and then, not to cause disturbance, has fallen. So he's going to be evicted here from the Forbidden City, and this is his only home he's really has known since he was 3. And he goes from being in sort of a de facto prisoner of the imperial system to a de jure prisoner of this warlord. And so, even though the character and Guy ended up working with the Japanese during World War II, you can totally understand why, because they sort of promised him autonomy, but then betrayed him, and then everything like that. And the way in which the flashbacks work is basically what's happening is he's telling the stories when he's a child, telling the story in to the prisoner, to the political rehabilitation, as a way of rehabilitating himself. And so one of the themes that goes through this story a lot is basically because he's so isolated and lonely, it's basically him trying to be a full-fledged human being, in a sense. And you see that with RJ, his relationship with RJ, his fraught relationship with his wife, and his mistress, second Corazon, whatever, and everything like that. And so the movie, the thing I really like about it the most, is how you absolutely get the screenplay is strong enough that you get all the political intrigue, you get the various warlords, the 12 forms of government or whatever he goes through, the political danger that he's in, because RJ, Peter O'Toole, is saying that you're going to be you might be assassinated, probably, blah blah blah, and everything like that. You get all of that, but it's really through his eyes, and even though in a lot of ways, the movie ends up making you sympathize with this poor guy, because he was basically a prisoner from the age of 3 to 60 or something like that. And there's a great melancholy on John Lone, I think is how you say the man's name, who played him. As an adult, and he gives a really good performance, and I'm really kind of surprised that, given how in this scene right here, he has a sort of a caged cage but wounded dignity, especially when the guy takes his picture, and I'm really surprised that He didn't get any. I mean, he was nominated for a Golden Globe, but I'm really surprised that a film that won 9 Oscars, and he has a very good performance as sort of the main thing about him. Now, the character, now it's probably a supporting performance because the Peng Yin is played by like 4 guys because of the age thing, but it's really striking. To me, that the acting was not recognized at all, but still won 9 Oscars because it's, usually in these big epics, there's at least a token, like freaking Lord of the Rings got Ian McKellen for Fellowship of the Ring. In that case, like I was saying, he's sort of a wounded Cage dignity here, and I really like that quality to his performance, and it's really touching in the end. In any case, again, you see sort of the big political upheavals, but it's through his eyes. And all of this stuff sort of makes it him relatable in the fact that we're not all sort of like masters of our own destiny. And that feels very, very true. And in any case, the next scene right here is probably my not the next shot, but the next scene coming up is probably my favorite scene in the entire film because it's along the themes about this story and how there's fixate on why they're telling it is sort of the way in which the imperial system malformed him because he's not a full human being. So this is his wedding night. It's an arranged marriage. He's 13, 14 here. 15, maybe. She's 17. And this obviously occurs before this scene I just showed you, but it's my favorite scene in the movie because this is the first time he's even remotely intimate with another human being, and the other ladies in waitings and everything are going to undress them here, which is very, very creepy because like this is a very private moment, and so in the way in which his personality is sort of malformed and he's not a full human being, and he's sort of trapped by the imperial system in the prisons, is he's just not allowed to be himself. So people are always sort of butting in, which this scene is absolutely just like people are butting in. And so there's that. Then on top of that, because the movie's playing around with sort of like what it means to be an emperor and sort of the pomp and circumstances of the role, there's something seductive about this scene as well, because there's something very central about how they are being intimate with each other, and then the ways and ladies are sort of finessing the situation along, but it doesn't really work. And so at the end, I really like this movie. I'm surprised the acting didn't get any attention. The screenplay is sort of the best feature of it because of how it handles the scope, both in terms of time, and in terms of narrative weight and everything like that, and while also very balancing the intimate portrait of the man. And so there's that, and it's a very remarkable piece of writing because of the way in which it focuses on the detail and sort of the grand picture. So that's going to be it for Cubs and Culture. Have a good day.